The morning began like every other morning in our world, empty. The streets did not welcome us, they tolerated us. I was only 9 years old, but the weight of 9 winters without a home pressed on my back like heavy stones. Beside me, my little sister clutched my hand. She was only 6, too small for a world this cruel, yet her eyes carried the same hollowness as mine. Hunger had carved lines on her face that should have been filled with childish laughter. She looked up at me as if I could protect her, as if I had answers, but all I had was silence. We stood in the corner of a busy street where people hurried past, their shoes polished, their coats warm, their pockets full. They did not look at us as children, they looked at us as shadows. The dog, our only companion, stood beside us. He was nothing but skin stretched over bones, yet he had learned to copy us. On his 2 hind legs, he pressed his front paws together as if begging, as if joining our silent prayer. And in some cruel twist of fate, it was the dog who drew their attention, not us. A man passing by burst into laughter. "Look at that mutt," he said, nudging his friend. "Begging better than the kids themselves." His friend doubled over, pointing at us. Laughter spread through the street like wildfire. People gathered not to help, not to show mercy, but to watch. To watch children beg with their dog, as if it were a circus act, as if our pain was their morning entertainment. My sister's small fingers dug into my hand. She whispered in the tiniest voice, "Why are they laughing?" "We're hungry." Her question was sharper than any knife. I wanted to tell her that people laughed because they didn't know better, because cruelty was easier than compassion. But the truth was harsher, they laughed because it made them feel bigger to see someone smaller. I lowered my head, pressing my palms together tighter, trying to show them that we were serious, that our need was real. My voice trembled as I whispered into the noise of the crowd, "Please, just a little bread. My sister hasn't eaten in 2 days." The words barely left my lips before they were drowned out by laughter. Someone clapped mockingly, another pretended to beg, mimicking my posture, making the crowd roar. My sister buried her face into my sleeve. The dog whimpered, lowering himself back to 4 legs for a moment before trying again. His body shook from weakness, yet he stood up on 2 legs once more, pressing his paws together. The crowd cheered, tossing small pieces of bread not toward us but toward him. My sister reached for the crumbs, but the dog quickly nudged them toward her, his loyalty stronger than his hunger. I felt tears burn my eyes. Even an animal had more kindness in his bones than the people around us. I remembered the last night we had spent under the broken archway near the old market. My sister had cried herself to sleep, her stomach growling louder than the dogs in the alley. I had promised her that tomorrow would be different. But tomorrow looked just like yesterday, only with more people laughing. One woman stopped and pulled out her phone. She pointed it at us, recording. "This will go viral," she giggled, "orphans with their begging dog." My fists clenched. Viral. For her, our hunger was a joke to share. For us, it was life or death. I looked around at the sea of faces, hoping to find one that wasn't twisted with mockery. But they all laughed. Some shook their heads as if we were pathetic, others simply walked by, pretending not to see. The shame was heavier than the hunger. Hunger gnawed at my stomach, but shame clawed at my soul. I felt myself shrinking, as if the more they laughed, the smaller I became. I wanted to shout, to scream, to tell them we weren't animals, that we were children, that we deserved to live. But no words came. Only silence. My sister whispered again, her voice trembling, "Will we always be like this?" Her eyes were wide, wet with tears, searching mine for hope. And in that moment, I lied to her. I forced my voice to steady, though it cracked with every word. "No, Chody. One day, they will see us. One day, things will change." Inside, I didn't believe it. But for her, I had to pretend. For her, I had to carry a hope I didn't feel. The dog pressed against my leg, as if to say he believed me, as if to remind me that even if the world laughed, we were not alone. As the sun rose higher, the shadows grew shorter, and so did our patience. My knees ached from kneeling, my hands burned from pressing together so long. Still, we begged. Still, we waited. Still, they laughed. I didn't know how long we could last. I only knew that if I gave up, my sister would starve. And so, I stayed. Silent. Hands joined. Eyes lowered. While the world mocked, I begged not for money, not for food alone, but for a miracle. The dog was not just an animal to us, he was family. In a world that had abandoned us, he was the only one who stayed. He had no name when we found him, only ribs showing through his thin coat and eyes that looked as tired as ours. My sister called him Mitty, because he followed us everywhere like the dust on our feet. From that day forward, he was ours, and we were his. Mitty had learned to copy us, not because we taught him, but because he understood. When we knelt, he stood on two legs. When we pressed our hands together, he pressed his paws. It was as if he had become a mirror of our suffering, a silent companion in humiliation. People laughed at us, but they laughed harder at him. They pointed, clapped, shouted, "Look! Even the dog begs better than the children." The cruelty stung more than hunger. My sister tugged my sleeve, whispering, Why does Mitty do this? He's hungry too." I swallowed hard. "Because he knows we are family," I said. But deep down, I wondered if he had simply learned that mimicking our pain made people notice. Maybe he knew it was the only way we survived. A group of young men passed by, laughing loudly. One of them bent down and snapped his fingers at Mitty. "Do the trick again, dog," he shouted. Mitty rose on his hind legs, pressed his paws together, and whimpered. The crowd burst into applause. They threw a few coins, not into our hands, but onto the ground near him. My sister rushed to pick them up before they were stolen by others passing by. My cheeks burned with shame. They weren't applauding our survival, they were applauding our degradation. The men laughed even louder. "Next time teach the kids to bark too," one shouted as they walked away. My sister buried her face in my side, her tiny shoulders shaking. "Why are they so mean, she asked. I had no answer. I wanted to hate Mitty for copying us, for becoming their entertainment. But when I looked at him, trembling on his hind legs, his eyes glistening with hunger yet fixed on us with loyalty, I couldn't. He wasn't mocking us. He was sharing our burden. His body shook from weakness, yet he refused to stop. He begged because we begged. He hurt because we hurt. Someone in the crowd whistled and tossed a half-eaten sandwich toward Mitty. He pounced, but instead of eating, he dragged it toward my sister. She picked it up with shaking hands, tearing it in half. She gave me the bigger piece, as she always did. But before either of us could take a bite, Mitty barked softly, nudging the food back toward her. My throat closed with emotion. Even starving, our dog chose her first. The crowd laughed again, thinking it was another trick. They clapped, as though he were a circus act. But to me, it was no trick. It was love. Love purer than anything I had seen in this cruel world. I thought of our parents then, faces blurry in my memory, voices like echoes in a faraway cave. I wondered if they would be proud that I had kept my sister alive this long, or ashamed that she now begged on the streets like me. I wondered if they could see Mitty, loyal and selfless, guarding us with his weak frame. In my heart, I knew they would have called him a blessing. But blessings didn't fill our stomachs. Blessings didn't silence laughter. Blessings didn't keep us warm at night. My sister tugged my hand again. She whispered, "Mitty is more human than they are." I looked at the crowd of polished shoes, full pockets, and laughing faces. She was right. The dog at my side had more humanity than the dozens of people passing by. A woman bent down suddenly, holding out her phone. She took a picture of us, two ragged children and their begging dog. She didn't say a word, just clicked and walked away smiling. I knew that somewhere, on some screen, people would see us and laugh. We weren't children anymore, we were a meme, a joke, a story they would share over dinner. My chest tightened with anger. I wanted to scream, to tell them all that we were human beings, not images, not entertainment. But my voice stayed trapped in my throat. All I could do was press my hands tighter, whispering again, "Please, just a little food." Mitty whimpered, shifting his weight on trembling legs. My sister leaned against me, exhausted. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, burning our skin. My stomach twisted in knots, but I ignored it. Hunger had become familiar, like a cruel friend who never left. At one point, a small child broke free from his mother's hand and ran toward us. He reached out, touching Mitty's paw. For a moment, there was innocence, one child seeing another creature without judgment. But the mother yanked him away sharply. "Don't touch them," she snapped. "They're filthy." Her words sliced through me. Filthy. That was what we were to them, not children, not human, just filth. My sister's eyes filled with tears. Do you think God sees us?" she asked. I wanted to tell her yes, that he saw every tear, every hunger pang, every cruel laugh. But my voice broke when I tried. Instead, I pressed my forehead against hers and whispered, "Even if no one else sees us, he does." Mitty barked softly, as if agreeing, as if reminding us that even in this crowd, we were not completely alone. And yet, I wondered how much longer we could endure. How much longer before my sister's hope faded, before Mitty's legs gave out, before I lost the last piece of strength I clung to. Still, I stayed on my knees. Still, I begged. Because if I stopped, if I gave up, my sister would starve, and I could not let that happen. The street had no shortage of people, yet not one of them saw us as children. They saw us as a performance. Every laugh that broke through the air was sharper than a whip across my back. It wasn't hunger that made me tremble, it was humiliation. I watched a group of men in suits stop right in front of us. They were not old, maybe in their 30s, but their voices carried authority, arrogance dripping from their every word. One of them pulled out a cigarette and lit it slowly, eyes fixed on us as though we were part of his entertainment for the day. He exhaled the smoke in our direction, smirking. "Beg harder," he mocked, waving his hand like he was commanding a servant. The others laughed, tossing coins onto the ground, not into our hands, but near the gutter where dirty water flowed. My sister moved as if to reach for the coins, but I pulled her back. Her dignity was worth more than scraps of metal. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes, but I shook my head. "Not from them," I whispered. Hunger screamed inside me, but pride roared louder. The men laughed harder at my refusal. "Too good for our money," one of them jeered. Another bent down, flicking a coin directly at Mitty. It hit his side, and he whimpered, but still rose again on his hind legs, pressing his paws together. The crowd clapped like it was a show. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Blood pooled in the tiny cuts, but I said nothing. A group of young women walked by next. They were dressed well, their laughter bright but cold. One stopped, pulling out her phone, framing us perfectly in her camera lens. She giggled as she posed with us in the background, as if we were scenery. Her friend laughed, "Post it." "Right, even dogs know how to beg better than kids here." They squealed at their own cruelty, as if they had just invented the funniest joke in the world. My sister lowered her head, her lips trembling. Why do they hate us?" she whispered. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. "They don't hate us," I lied. "They just don't understand." But in my heart, I knew it wasn't misunderstanding. It was choice. They chose to laugh instead of help. They chose cruelty instead of kindness. The hours stretched longer. The sun beat down on us, turning the street into an oven. My lips cracked, my throat dry. My sister leaned heavily against me, her small body weak from hunger. Mitty's legs shook violently, but still he stood, still he begged, as if he carried the same promise I carried: "We will not let her starve." Then something happened that tore through me. A boy, maybe my age, maybe a little older, stopped and looked at us. For a moment, I saw curiosity, maybe even pity, in his eyes. But his father yanked him by the arm. "Don't stare at them," he snapped. "They're nothing but beggars." My chest hollowed out. Nothing but beggars. That was all we were to them, labels without names, shadows without stories. A man carrying bread passed by. My sister's eyes lit up, her hands reaching forward instinctively. But he laughed, breaking off a piece and tossing it onto the ground in front of Mitty. "Dance for it," he mocked. My sister froze. The crowd around him chuckled. My chest burned with shame as I reached for the bread, but my pride forced me to stop. I couldn't reduce myself to chasing crumbs like an animal. I let the bread lie there, even as hunger screamed inside me. Mitty sniffed it but didn't touch it. He looked at me instead, waiting for my permission. I shook my head. He lowered himself back down, curling against my side, still starving but still loyal. The cruelty wasn't just in their words or their laughter, it was in their indifference. People stepped over us as though we were nothing but trash. Some wrinkled their noses, covering their mouths as they passed, as if poverty was a disease they could catch. Children stared until their parents pulled them away, teaching them silently to ignore suffering. I looked at my sister, her face pale, her eyes dimming with exhaustion. "Bye," she whispered, "I feel invisible." Her words tore through me. Invisible. To them, that's all we were. But to me, she was everything. To me, she was the only reason I stayed on my knees, the only reason I kept my hands pressed together. A woman finally stopped, her face stern. For a moment, I thought she might help. But she bent down, dropped a coin into my hand, and said, "Don't waste it. You people always waste everything." Her words carried more weight than the coin she gave. She didn't see me as a child. She saw me as a problem. I wanted to throw the coin back, but my sister clutched it tightly, whispering, "At least it's something." My body trembled with anger. I wanted to shout, to scream, to tell them all that we were not invisible, not worthless, not animals. But the words wouldn't come. My voice had been stolen by hunger, by humiliation, by cruelty that had no end. The crowd thinned as the day dragged on, but the echoes of their laughter stayed. Each chuckle, each jeer carved itself into my memory like scars that would never fade. And as the sun began to lower, painting the street in shades of orange and red, I realized something. Hunger would not kill us first. Shame would. But just as I thought the day would end like every other, with empty hands, empty stomachs, and broken hearts, a shadow fell across us. It was heavier, different, deliberate. Someone had stopped. Someone wasn't laughing. And in that moment, though I didn't know it yet, everything began to change. The sun was beginning to fall lower, burning our skin with its last angry rays, when I noticed him. At first, he was just another figure in the blur of people rushing by, shoes polished, coat neat, steps steady. I expected him to pass like all the others. But he slowed. Then he stopped. And when he stopped, everything around us shifted. The crowd's laughter faltered, some even quieting down as his presence sank in. He wasn't like the others. He didn't point, didn't laugh, didn't sneer. He just stood still, his gaze locked on us, on two children and a trembling dog begging in the dust. My sister tugged my sleeve, whispering, "Bye, he looks different." She was right. His eyes weren't empty like the others. They weren't sharp with mockery. They were heavy, carrying something I couldn't name. Pain? Memory? Compassion? He walked closer. My breath caught in my throat. Every time someone had approached us before, it ended in coins thrown with disgust, words soaked in pity, or laughter sharper than knives. But this man knelt. He lowered himself to the level of my sister's eyes. The crowd shifted uneasily. Their entertainment was changing, their laughter interrupted. The man ignored them. His voice was quiet, steady, but it cut through the air like thunder. "Children, where are your parents?" The question pierced deeper than hunger. No one had ever asked us that. Not once. People asked us to move aside, to stop blocking the road, to beg more quietly. But never about our story. My sister's lips trembled as she whispered, "They're gone, forever." The man's eyes closed for a brief moment, his face tightening as though her words struck him in the chest. When he opened them again, I saw something there I hadn't seen in years: compassion. Real compassion. He reached into his pocket, and my stomach twisted. I braced myself for the clink of a coin, the dismissive gesture of charity. But he didn't pull out money. He pulled out a handkerchief, worn but clean, and gently wiped the dust from my sister's face. The crowd grew silent. Some looked away. Others shifted uncomfortably. It was as if his simple act of kindness exposed their cruelty, dragged it into the light for everyone to see. He turned to me. "How long have you been here?" he asked softly. My throat was too tight to answer. My voice had been buried under shame for too long. But Mitty barked once, a soft whimper that broke the silence. The man's lips curved into the faintest smile. He reached out, not to push Mitty away like so many did, but to stroke his trembling head. Mitty wagged his tail weakly, pressing closer. It was then I realized something. This man wasn't just looking at us. He was seeing us. And that difference meant everything. High voltage. If you were standing in that crowd, would you have laughed, or stopped? Type stop in the comments if you believe kindness should never be delayed. The man straightened slightly, his voice firmer now. He turned his head toward the crowd and asked, "Do you find this funny?" The question silenced them instantly. No one answered. No one dared. The laughter that had mocked us all day vanished into thin air. He looked back at us, then removed his scarf and wrapped it gently around my sister's shoulders. My eyes burned as I watched her tiny frame swallowed by warmth for the first time in weeks. Then he took off his jacket and draped it across me. It smelled faintly of leather and soap, and in that moment, it felt heavier than gold. I couldn't hold my voice anymore. It cracked as I whispered, Why are you helping us?" The man's gaze softened. His reply was simple, but it struck like a hammer against stone. Because no child should live like this. And for the first time in months, I believed that maybe, just maybe, our story could change. His voice was calm, but each syllable carried a weight that silenced the air around us. "Children, where are your parents?" The question had been asked before, by authorities, by people who wanted to shove us into a shelter only to forget us again. But from him, it was different. His tone wasn't official, it wasn't dismissive. It was human. The kind of voice that trembles because it cares too much. My sister froze. Her lips parted, but the words took a moment to crawl out. "They're gone, forever." Her tiny voice cracked, and I felt her grip on my hand tighten as if she were holding on to me to keep from disappearing. The man's eyes closed, just for a breath. His face twitched, like he had remembered something that hurt him, too. When he opened his eyes, they glistened with a sorrow that matched ours. No one in that crowd had ever mirrored our pain before. But he did. He carried it like it was his own. He didn't rush to speak. He let silence breathe between us, and in that silence, I felt something shift. Then he whispered, "No child should have to say that." I swallowed hard. I didn't know what to say back. The words felt strange, almost dangerous, because they weren't filled with mockery or pity. They were filled with something I had nearly forgotten existed: dignity. The crowd shuffled uncomfortably. They weren't used to seeing anyone treat us this way. They were used to our silence, to our bowed heads, to our humiliation. But this man was dragging their cruelty into the open with nothing more than kindness. He reached into his coat again, but this time not for coins, not for food. Instead, he pulled out a small notebook and a pen. He scribbled something quickly, then tore out the page and folded it carefully before slipping it into my palm. I looked at him, confused. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaky. His reply came steady, firm, yet gentle. "It's an address. A place where you will be safe. A place where no one will laugh at you again." I stared at the folded paper in my hand, unable to move. Safety. The word felt foreign, like it belonged in someone else's story. My sister leaned against me, whispering, "Does he mean it?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The possibility itself was too fragile, too dangerous to believe in. The man knelt again, lowering his voice so only we could hear. Listen to me. I lost my parents when I was young too. I know what it's like to be forgotten. His eyes locked onto mine, and in them, I saw a reflection of myself. I saw the boy he must have been once, lost, broken, begging the world to notice. But I also know this, one act of kindness can change everything. You just have to let it. No one had ever spoken to me like that. Not even when my parents were alive had I heard words so deliberate, so heavy with truth. The world had taught me to keep my head low, to survive without being seen. And here was a man telling me not only that he saw me, but that my life deserved to change. My throat tightened. Why us? I whispered. Why stop for us when so many others walked by? His lips curled into the faintest smile, but his eyes stayed serious. Because everyone else forgot to look. I couldn't. Behind him, the crowd had grown restless. Their laughter had died, replaced with unease. Some turned to leave, as though the sight of compassion was too heavy to bear. Others muttered under their breath, irritated that their entertainment had been ruined. But no one laughed anymore. Not one. My sister, still clutching my hand, whispered the question that had haunted her for months. Sir, are we bad? Is that why they laugh? The man's face hardened, his jaw tightening as if the question itself hurt him. He shook his head firmly. No. You are not bad. They are wrong. Do you hear me? You are not what they say. You are more than their laughter. You are children. You are human. And you matter. I felt the words pierce through me, shattering walls I hadn't even realized I'd built around my heart. My chest ached, not from hunger this time, but from the flood of something far rarer, hope. High voltage. If you believe every child deserves dignity, type hope in the comments. Your voice can be the kindness someone is waiting for. Tears blurred my vision. I hated crying in front of the crowd, but this time I couldn't stop them. They weren't tears of shame. They were tears of something else, relief, maybe. My sister reached up, brushing at my cheeks with her small fingers, whispering, "He sees us, bye. He really sees us." For the first time, I nodded. Because I felt it too. This stranger, this man we had never seen before, had given us more in a few sentences than the world had given us in years. Not food, not coins, not pity, but words. Words that stitched together the broken parts of our souls. Words we had never heard before. The stranger's words still echoed in my head, circling like a melody I had never known existed. You are not bad. You are children. You matter. But words alone had never kept us warm, had never filled our bellies. I was grateful, yes, but part of me waited for the moment when he would stand, toss a coin, and walk away like all the rest. Instead, he stood differently. His back straightened, his shoulders squared, and when he turned toward the crowd, his presence shifted the air around us. He was not just a man anymore, he was a storm about to break. Do you find this funny? His voice cracked through the silence like thunder. The crowd froze. Laughter that had once filled the street died in their throats. No one dared to meet his gaze. For hours they had mocked us freely, but now under his eyes, their cruelty shrank. A man in the back tried to chuckle weakly, but the sound evaporated under the stranger's stare. I asked you, he repeated, sharper now, do you find this funny? Children on their knees, starving, mocked like animals, do you? No one answered. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others looked away, ashamed. For the first time, I saw shame touch them, and it was almost enough to heal the wounds their laughter had carved. Then the man turned back to us. Slowly, deliberately, he removed his scarf and wrapped it tighter around my sister's shoulders. Her eyes widened, warmth settling against her tiny frame. She clung to it as though it were a treasure worth more than gold. Next, he took off his jacket, heavy and fine, smelling of leather and faint cologne. Without hesitation, he draped it across me. My body shook under the sudden weight of comfort, my chest filling with something I didn't recognize at first, dignity. The crowd gasped softly. This wasn't charity. This wasn't a coin thrown to silence guilt. This was sacrifice. This was a man giving a piece of himself. He looked at me then, his eyes steady. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. His palm was open, strong, unwavering. My throat tightened. I stared at it, torn between fear and longing. I had dreamed of rescue before, only to wake in the same cold corner. Could this be different? My sister whispered, "Bye, he means it." Her small hand clutched mine harder, as if begging me not to let this chance slip away. Mitty barked once, tail wagging weakly. Even he seemed to understand. But fear rooted me to the ground. What if he was lying? What if he led us somewhere worse? What if hope was another trap? My knees trembled. "Why?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Why us?" The man didn't hesitate. His answer came firm, unshakable. "Because this is not your place. You are not meant to kneel in the dirt while the world laughs. You are meant to stand." Something inside me cracked. Not in pain this time, but in release. The dam of mistrust, the wall of fear, it all crumbled at those words. I reached out, trembling, and placed my hand in his. His grip closed around mine, steady, grounding. The crowd stood frozen, their eyes wide. They had come to watch children humiliated, but now they were witnessing something else entirely, dignity restored in front of them. Some looked ashamed, others angry at themselves, but none of them laughed anymore. He lifted my sister gently into one arm. She clung to him, her tiny frame pressing against his chest like she had found the father she lost. With his other hand, he gripped mine tightly, refusing to let go. Mitty trotted beside us, barking softly, as if to announce to the world that we were no longer alone. If you believe one act of courage can silence 1,000 cruel voices, type courage in the comments. Let kindness be louder than laughter. We stepped forward together. Every step away from that corner felt like leaving behind chains I had carried my whole life. The same crowd that had once mocked us now parted in silence, moving aside as if ashamed to stand in his path. For once, people weren't looking at us like beggars, they were looking at us like human beings. I glanced back for a moment, at the spot where we had knelt all day. It still held the dust of our knees, the shadows of our humiliation. But as we walked away, I realized something. That corner no longer belonged to us. That shame no longer defined us. The man's voice broke through my thoughts. "You will not beg again," he said firmly, as though making a promise not just to us, but to himself. And though my heart trembled with fear and disbelief, a spark of faith flickered inside me. Maybe he was right. Maybe this really was the day everything changed. The world outside the corner we had left behind felt like another planet. For so long, the streets had been our ceiling, the stones our bed, and the cold our only companion. To step away from that life, hand in hand with the stranger who carried my sister in his arms and walked with me at his side, was like walking into a dream. We entered a neighborhood I had never dared to walk through. The buildings were tall, clean, their windows glowing with warm light. The smell of food drifted through the air, spices, bread, roasted meat. My stomach clenched painfully, but this time not with humiliation. It was longing, raw and desperate. My sister's eyes widened, her tiny hands gripping the man's coat tighter. When we reached a tall house with a wooden door polished to a shine, he stopped. He looked down at me and said, "This is my home. And tonight, it is yours too." I froze. My feet refused to move. His home? Ours? The words didn't fit in my mind. No one had ever opened their door for us. No one had ever called us theirs. My throat tightened, fear and disbelief battling inside me. What if it was a trick? What if we stepped inside only to be thrown out again? But before I could answer, he opened the door, and the warmth hit me like sunlight. The air was thick with the smell of soup simmering on the stove, of fresh bread resting on the counter. A fire crackled in the hearth, its flames licking the wood, casting shadows that danced on the walls. For the first time in months, my skin felt warmth that wasn't from the harsh sun. He placed my sister gently on a chair near the fire. She gasped softly, her tiny hands reaching out as though afraid the chair might vanish beneath her. Mitty collapsed by the hearth, curling into the rug with a sigh so deep it almost sounded like relief. The man disappeared into another room and returned with bowls of steaming soup. He set one before me, one before my sister, and even placed a small dish on the floor for Mitty. I stared at the bowl, the steam rising like a miracle. My hands shook as I reached for the spoon. The first sip burned my tongue, but I didn't care. The warmth spread through my body, filling every empty corner of my soul. My sister devoured hers, spoon clattering against the bowl as she ate faster than she could swallow. She coughed, tears streaming down her cheeks, but kept going. The man gently placed a hand on her shoulder, saying, slowly, "Little one. There is plenty. You don't have to fight for it anymore." Plenty. The word almost broke me. For so long, there had never been enough. Every crumb had been a battle, every bite a stolen treasure. And now here we were, with bowls refilled before they were empty, with bread placed in our hands faster than we could eat it. I felt something shift inside me, a fear I hadn't even known I carried began to loosen. The fear that tomorrow we would starve. The fear that laughter would always be louder than mercy. The fear that no one in the world would ever see us as more than beggars. After we had eaten, my sister leaned back in her chair, her eyes heavy with sleep. For the first time, her face relaxed, the lines of hunger and humiliation melting into softness. She looked like a child again, not a beggar, not a shadow. Just a little girl. The man watched us quietly, his eyes steady, as if memorizing the sight. Finally, he spoke. "You will stay here. You will not return to those streets." His words were not a suggestion. They were a vow. I wanted to thank him, to pour every ounce of gratitude from my soul into words. But thank you felt too small. How could 2 words hold the weight of what he had given us? He hadn't just fed us. He hadn't just warmed us. He had restored something far more precious, our dignity. I looked at him, my voice trembling. "Why are you doing this for us?" He leaned back, his face shadowed by the firelight. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he whispered, "Because once, someone did it for me." If this story reminds you that kindness multiplies when passed on, type blessing in the comments. Let the world see that compassion never dies. His words echoed in my mind. Someone had once saved him. And now, by saving us, he was keeping that kindness alive. The chain of mercy had not broken, it had reached us. That night, we did not sleep on cold stone. We lay on soft blankets, warmth wrapping around us like a promise. My sister curled against me, whispering before sleep took her, "Bye, is this real?" I pressed my forehead to hers and whispered back, "Yes, Chody. It's real." And for the first time in years, I believed my own words. That night felt like stepping into a world I had never known existed. For years, the streets had been our ceiling, the dirt our blanket, and laughter our punishment. But here, in this house, the air itself was different. It smelled of wood and warmth, of food and comfort. For so long, I had believed that hunger was permanent, that cruelty was the language of the world. Yet now, as I lay on a bed softer than clouds, I realized the world could speak another language, a language of kindness. My sister lay beside me, her small body curled under a blanket that swallowed her whole. Her breathing was steady, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Even in sleep, she clutched the fabric like it was treasure, afraid it might vanish. Mitty sprawled on the rug, belly exposed, paws twitching in dreams. His sighs were deep, unguarded, the sighs of a creature who, for the first time, believed he was safe. I should have been asleep, but I couldn't. My eyes traced the beams of the ceiling, my ears tuned to every crackle of the fire. My heart pounded not from fear, but from disbelief. I had dreamed of nights like this, only to wake up colder, hungrier, and more broken than before. This time, I was terrified of waking. Before leaving us to rest, the man had looked me in the eye and said, "Tomorrow will not be the same. You will not go back there." His words weren't wrapped in doubt. They weren't hopes. They were declarations. And in his voice, I heard the weight of truth. I turned to my sister, brushing her hair gently from her face. Even in sleep, she murmured, "Bye, Kenna." The word cracked my chest wide open. Tears filled my eyes, spilling silently onto the pillow. I whispered back, "We're safe now, Chody." For the first time in my life, I believed my own words. Morning came with golden light streaming through curtains. Curtains. I had never thought about them before, never understood their purpose. But now, as sunlight softened by fabric painted the room, I realized even small things could change the way the world felt. My sister stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Bye, where are we?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "Home," I whispered. She blinked, confusion melting into a smile so wide it erased years of pain. The man was already in the kitchen. The table was laid with bowls of porridge, slices of fruit glistening like jewels, bread warm from the oven. The smell alone made my stomach twist. My sister gasped, covering her mouth. "It's too much," she whispered. The man shook his head gently. "There is no such thing as too much for children who have known too little." We ate slowly. For once, we weren't racing against time or fear. Every bite was steady, every spoonful a reminder that we no longer had to fight for scraps. For the first time, food wasn't survival, it was life. After breakfast, the man led us to the fire. His eyes studied us with a tenderness I couldn't understand. He spoke slowly, deliberately, as if he wanted each word carved into our souls. "You must understand something. Yesterday was not your shame. It was theirs. The cruelty of the crowd does not define you." I swallowed hard. For years, I had believed laughter defined me. That my worth was measured in mockery. But his words tore through those lies, peeling away chains I had worn so long I thought they were skin. My sister tilted her head, her voice fragile. "But, why us? Why stop?" The man leaned forward. "Because once, someone stopped for me." Silence filled the room. My breath caught. His eyes darkened with memory. "I was your age. When my parents died. I begged too. I slept on the ground. I thought no one would ever see me. But then, one man stopped. He gave me food, a bed, and dignity. That man saved me. And I swore that I would never walk past suffering. Yesterday, when I saw you, I saw myself. And I could not walk away." Tears blurred my vision. His story was ours, told years earlier. And now, by saving us, he was continuing a chain of kindness that had begun long before us. My sister whispered, almost afraid of the answer, "So, we're not bad?" His reply was fierce, immediate. "No. You are not bad. They were wrong. You are children. You are human. And you matter." The words pierced through me. My chest ached, not from hunger, but from hope. Walls I had built to survive crumbled, and light poured in. The day passed in small miracles. My sister laughed, playing with Mitty on the carpet. She hugged a doll the man had given her, holding it like treasure. Her laughter rang pure, untouched by cruelty. I sat quietly, watching her. For the first time, she looked like what she truly was, a child. Not a beggar. Not invisible. Just a child. The man watched too, his face calm, his eyes soft. Finally, as the sun dipped low, he said, "This is the day your story changes. Remember it. Mark it. Because no matter what the world told you before, you are not invisible anymore." Invisible. That word had haunted us, echoing in every laugh, in every cruel glance. But tonight, it no longer belonged to us. That night, I lay awake again, but this time not in fear. My thoughts stretched forward, into futures I had never dared imagine. Futures where my sister went to school. Futures where Mitty grew old in peace. Futures where I stood tall, not on my knees. I thought of the man's story. Someone had once saved him. He had saved us. And maybe one day, when we were grown, we would save someone else. Perhaps kindness was not rare, it was just waiting for someone brave enough to carry it forward. I realized then, the day the man stopped for us was not just our turning point. It was proof that mercy does not vanish, it travels, hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation. If this story touched your heart, type change in the comments. Share this story so others remember, one act of kindness can silence 1,000 cruel voices. Laughter fades, but compassion lives forever. My sister's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Half asleep, she whispered, "Bye, is this real?" I wrapped the blanket tighter around her. "Yes, Chody," I whispered. "It's real." Her breathing slowed, her body relaxed. Mitty stirred, wagged his tail in his sleep, and pressed closer to us. I closed my eyes, my heart lighter than it had ever been. And in the silence, I whispered the words that I knew would stay with me forever. This was the day everything changed. And for the first time, I knew it was true.